Let's talk about democracy. Now, there's a lot of things that have happened lately that aren't democratic, and people aren't necessarily batting an eyelid. Before we get into that, I just need to clarify in the UK, we don't actually have a democracy. Now, I'm not saying this because of the Brexit catastrophe. I'm saying it because we have a parliamentary democracy. Areas across the country, we elect one person to represent our best interests. So we go about whatever we're doing in life and we trust that this one individual that we elected represents our best interests. Now for me, as I've said before, that's Charlie Elfrick, the MP for Dover and Deal and surrounding villages. He does not represent Dover in any way, shape or form, and the reason why he's still in power is because most people in Dover do not vote. This man is a racist, he is a bigot, he is a rapist, although, full disclaimer, I have to say that the investigation has not yet concluded, so he could be completely innocent. But let's face it, the Conservatives protect paedophiles. It takes a lot to be kicked out of the fucking party. But this man who claims to care about public spending is also one of the top 3 members of parliament in Kent who have spent the most and claimed the most back on expenses. He is a liar, a hypocrite, and fully supports universal credits, as well as a hard Brexit. May have mentioned this before, but Dover has 10,000 lorries coming through it every single day. It is the most important port when it comes to imports and exports, and it is only made possible because we have a deal and a part of the European Union. A hard Brexit will fuck Dover royally. But again, he stays in power because most people in Dover don't actually vote. But then we have a few of the other issues that come that are not so democratic. In fact, they're not even parliamentary democracy. Things like what we're about to face with the new Prime Minister. Now, if you are a member of a Conservative Party, you will be able to vote on who is our next Prime Minister, but only if you are a member of the Conservative Party. Me, as someone who is not affiliated with any particular party, I do not get a say. I am not given the right to vote on who leads the country I live in. If you are a Labour member, you don't get a vote. Only Conservative members will get a vote. This doesn't seem very democratic to me, but it's something that this country just bats an eyelid. We also didn't get a choice of who became health minister. We had no choice we had no say in the matter that Matt Hancock and Jeremy Hunt before him would take such an important role and spearhead the NHS and social care into the ground. We had no say in Boris Johnson becoming foreign minister and making this country a fucking laughingstock. Excuse me. The point I want to get is most positions in government aren't actually elected by the people. They're elected by people who are elected, which is not too dissimilar to the EU. But speaking of the EU, this week we had the EU elections. Some of the reports that I've read have said that close to 2 million EU nationals were not allowed to vote in the EU parliamentary elections. 2 million people not allowed to vote because this country, this government, fucked up on the paperwork. Now, as most of us, or practically all of us, we got that little card come through. But if you were an EU national, it turns out for a lot of the polling stations, you had to apply for another card to mean you could actually vote. Now, the government didn't tell EU nationals this. This wasn't announced. This wasn't made public knowledge. So when they went to vote, they found that their names had been physically crossed off the list, meaning their right to democracy was taken away from them. And it wasn't just EU nationals in this country. It was also British people who live in foreign who live in other EU countries who are not allowed to vote as well. And again, this was because our government, and at best, can't find their own backsides with a roadmap. Now, I do have a slight speculation. I do think that it was intentional, because whether people want to admit this or not, our government, the people making the decisions, are very pro-Brexit. And if you allow enough people, enough of a voice, I'm pretty sure the vote will be overturned. Of course, it's not something that Nigel Farage, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Boris Johnson, or hell, even Theresa May wants. But Theresa May because of ego more than anything else. And while we're talking about Theresa May, I find it fucking insulting that she comes out and cries. She didn't shed a tear for Grenfell, and yet she has the audacity to bring it up. She doesn't care that 4 million children have been forced into poverty because of her government. But she cares that she's lost her job. Very conservative of you, Theresa. The negative side of this possible democracy, this speculation that I have, is that it was intentional, that they didn't want EU nationals to vote. This government, Theresa May, has shown very, very clearly that she's incredibly xenophobic and racist, like most Conservative members of Parliament. She's shown time and time again that she doesn't want the common people to vote, because, let's face it, Conservatives don't want common people to vote. They don't want people who are working class to vote. That's one of our human rights that they are trying to get rid of. And again, I've said this before, I'm going to say it again, the only reason they haven't is because of the EU Court of Justice. Not because they don't want to, they would do it in a heartbeat if they could, and that day unfortunately is coming. What we've seen is that our democracy has been stripped back. And again, even as a parliamentary democracy, there are millions of things that we have absolutely no say on whatsoever. Prime Minister should never fall into that category. Only if you are a Conservative Member of Parliament will you actually get a voice into who replaces Theresa May. That's it. If you're not affiliated, if you don't pay in to the Conservative Party, you don't get a voice. You don't get that democratic right to say, I want such and such to be Prime Minister. You don't have that right. To me, that's wrong, because it's not just the leader of the party. And in a different situation, I could get behind it. I am not a Labour member. So if Labour wants to put someone else in charge of Labour, I personally think that would be a mistake. But I don't pay into to Labour, so okay, fine. But when it goes from just being the leader of a party to the Prime Minister, that should be a general election. There is a petition going around. Now, I know with the Brexit petition for a second referendum that got 6 million, or just over 6 million votes, signatures, that was ignored, and that is an atrocity that it was ignored. But last time I checked, this petition to call for a general election when Theresa May steps down was at 26,000, 27,000 signatures. I'm going to leave that link down below. I've already shared it on my Twitter, BamGimson30. But sign it. Whether you're part of the Conservative Party, whether you're part of Labour Party, whether you're part of the mad raving loony party, it matters going forward. And again, it's not just Brexit. It's not just, are we going to stay, are we going to leave, is there going to be a second referendum or anything like that. It's universal credits. It's 4 million children forced into poverty since 2016. There's a story I want to get to a little bit later today where pensioners, if they're not both at retirement age, they won't be given their pension like they have been before. They'll be put onto universal credits. It's absolutely fucking disgusting with the horrors that have come from universal credits. It matters who is in number 10 Downing Street. It matters who our Prime Minister is. It should not be left to a handful of people to pick. So again, I'm going to leave that petition down below. Please take 5 minutes to sign it. It's easy. If you've never signed one of these things before, your name, your email address, your postcode, you tick a little box to say you live in the UK. That's it. And then you verify your email address. That's it. That's it. It's that easy. So that will be down below. Please take the time to sign it. What happens to this country going forward? I personally believe we are going to crash out with a no deal. But it could work providing we have the right person in number 10. Now we're all going to take a massive hit. That is unavoidable. And now even the cheerleaders of Brexit are saying the same thing. But it matters who is in number 10. Because so far since 2010, we've had people who have sat by and let people starve to death. We've had people who have sat by and acted negatively towards our NHS being spearheaded into the ground. Who have laughed while care homes have been shut. This matters. 5 minutes. That's it.